Welcome to the First Responders Wealth Network. Our mission is to help all first responders change their mindset towards money and educate how to build long-term wealth through real estate investing. Are you ready?
All right, everyone, welcome back to another podcast. I'm Dave Knight. I'm super excited to have, actually, this will be a different interview and podcast than my normal real estate, but it's total, keeping with the theme of wealth hacker, and any type of wealth hacker advantage that you can is a good thing. So my cousin is literally a guru of credit card points, and that's kind of a conversation. You don't really run across a lot of people who are really up to speed on all that stuff. And where it comes back, and I'll just paint a picture for you. So Jim's married to my cousin Mel, and we're up at the cottage and we're talking, and not as often as we would like, but especially in this last family reunion we had, he tells a story of how he's traveled around the world, gone on a few trips with my cousin Mel, and all on points, which is crazy and blows my mind. And I mean, it's very complicated in some ways, but I'm going to let Jim introduce himself, and then we can really dive into the power of leveraging credit card points.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Happy to be here today. My name is Jim Shinkewski. I live in Vancouver. I'm a marine biologist by trade, but for fun, I'm a points hacker. So we'll get into the nitty gritty of that later on. But like Dave said, I gave him a little taste of it during a discussion. And it's a really large world with many opportunities that are quite underutilized. If we go back to how all of this started for me, I was like probably many of your listeners, had one credit card, paid an annual fee on it every year, got minimum return on the rewards that I earned on that card. But I would often board a plane and walk through business class and say, hey, how could I be in this seat? There's got to be a better way. And back then, the fares weren't very competitive. You would pay 10 times for a business class seat what you would for an economy seat. And the value is just not there. But there are a lot of ways to get that for a fraction of the cost or flat out free. Now, your audience is a savvy group of financially well-heeled and tuned on people.
Well, we hope so. That's what we're trying to turn them into here, Jim. So,
yeah, and I think this will be of interest to a lot of people because there is some outsized value to be found. I think through this discussion, we might be able to hit on a few ways that might work for a lot of your listeners.
Awesome. Yeah, the biggest thing that I took away is just the different types of cards that are out there. I mean, what I used was just my normal TD, Visa. Originally, I had like a platinum travel card, accumulate points and travel dollars that I could use towards my purchase. And then you got me into Aeroplan. And I learned about the Aeroplan points, and then really leveraging, the bonuses that come along with certain purchases, and then certain cards pop up and you jump on those. Let's talk about, well, first off, why don't you just run with it? Because I know you've explained this to many people who aren't as savvy like me. So just paint the picture and let's just roll.
Sure thing, yeah. You'll notice that every bank in Canada offers their own version of a travel rewards card. And these fit the travel patterns of most people. You get about a 1% return. So if you spend $10,000 on your card in a year, you'll end up with a $100 travel voucher that you can use for whatever you want. And that's great. It works for most people because it's completely flexible. You can book it for any flight, and you'll be on an economy class flight with your family from Toronto to Orlando to go to Disney World once every 10 years at those rates of earnings. And that works for a lot of people, and banks count on that working for people because they make a good amount of money by providing that service. So most people, I would imagine, in your audience, they've had one card. Let's say the RBC Avion card. That one seems to be the most popular over here. You have it, you pay fees on it for 5 years, that's $600 worth of fees. In that time, you've accrued maybe $300-400 worth of rewards based on what most people's spending and travel patterns look like. That's not a good deal. What we do in the points and miles community, and there are a bunch of us out there, don't have one credit card. Right now I have 9 credit cards. I just got 3 more in the last 2 months, and that works well.
First off, that's a big hurdle for me, for the mindset of like having 9 credit cards. Like, does that not hurt your credit score, having all those credit cards in and out?
It really doesn't. Your score will take a little dip for the first couple of months while a new credit inquiry appears on your report.
Mm-hmm.
That goes away over time. It doesn't take very long. Now, with 9 credit cards currently open for me and about 60 canceled that all appear on my report, my score is always over 800. So as long as you pay it on time and you don't carry a balance, you'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's a key point I want to emphasize, is that if you are not financially liquid enough to pay your balances in full and you have to pay interest, this isn't for you yet. But I'm going to show you a couple of tricks on how to get the outsized value, how to get the round the world business trips, and how to get huge returns on airline mile and credit card point investments. So with 9 cards open currently in my portfolio, I've got 2 that have been open forever since university, and I don't use them at all. Maybe 1 transaction a year to keep them active. That is a big contributor to your credit score, is length of credit history. So I've got 2 accounts that have been open for 20 plus years, and then I've got 7 other accounts, each that generate points, some different points, some contributing to the same points program. But all of those have been open anywhere from 1 week to about 3 years. For me, what works is to keep a card open for a year, get the sign-up bonus, cancel it, wait 6 months or so, apply for it again. Now, banks are starting to crack down on that a bit because that makes me not a very profitable customer to them. But while these loopholes are open, we need to be able to attack them. Some of this might look a bit nefarious. We play at the fringes of what the banks and airlines will allow. Nothing illegal, of course, but it's against what their ideal customer would do. Your bank wants you to open a credit card, accrue interest on it, pay it over time, and pay that annual fee every year. That doesn't work for me. Dave, I'm sure you don't do that. You know how to manage money.
Well, thanks to you in this area. Yep.
Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunity to be had. American Express used to be the most lucrative program in Canada. They've tightened their conditions a bit where they don't allow repeat sign-up bonuses. So we've had to find other ways to make that work for us. In conjunction with other programs offered in Canada, it's still quite lucrative. There's a lot of traveling to be done and a lot of resources to chase in order to do so. So right now, I always keep a plan for where do I want to go, what do I want to do, how many points do I need from what program, and what's the card strategy to get it. Now, I also travel a lot for work, so I accrue miles from flight activities and other things, but it's nowhere near as beneficial or generous as credit cards are, because credit card customers are profitable customers. Most airlines don't make a lot of money from moving people around. They make money from cargo, and they make money from selling their airline miles to banks to give away on credit cards. American Airlines last year lost money on moving passengers. The only reason they made a profit is because of cargo and selling AA miles to Chase Bank, to American Express, to whatever other financial partners they have in the US.
Really?
Because,
interesting.
yeah, if you ever bought a domestic flight in the US, they're super cheap. Domestic flights in Canada are not cheap, but in the US, very good price. And that's why they're super competitive with each other. They're a low quality product. They're a utility product, essentially, a commodity. They don't have a lot of perks unless you're paying big fares for international flights. They make their margins elsewhere.
Interesting.
Yeah. So let's talk for a second about what I have in my card portfolio right now. I'll just mention 7 cards that I'm using.
Okay.
From most recent going back, I usually keep a card open for a year, maybe a bit more, often less. With one exception, the American Express Platinum card. You remember that metal one that I showed you at the cottage?
Yeah, it feels good, looks good, and it gives good points. I like all 3.
It really does. It really does. It's got a ton of perks. It's one that I hold year to year because all the lounge access and all the secondary perks. And it just revamped its points earning regimen. So it's a lot more generous than it used to be. Before it used to be 1.25 points per dollar on everything. Now it's 3 points for restaurants, 2 points for all travel, and 1 point for everything else, which my travel patterns makes it a very valuable card. However, Mel and I are going to New York next month, and hotels there are really expensive. And we want to be right in Midtown because there's a lot to see and do there. So we need to book something, one of the most expensive hotel zones in the world. And I don't want to pay that. So looking at a mid-tier 4-star Marriott, it's about 500 to 600 Canadian a night.
Oh, wow.
And we need 5 nights there. So I thought, well, I've got 100,000 Marriott points right now. Let's get some more. So there's a Marriott credit card that I opened to get 50,000 points right away. And now with that card, that put me over the top. $2,700 worth of hotel is free in New York City.
Okay, hold on. So 50, how many points for the bonus?
That was 50,000 points.
And that'll cover your stay.
It covered about 40% of the stay. Yeah, because I already had some points in the account.
Oh, okay, I understand. But still, that's a lot.
Yeah, it made a huge difference. I wouldn't recommend that you ever do a redemption for less than 1%. That's the base you can get on even the chintziest cashback cards. Mm-hmm. Marriott points are fairly cheap. They're a bit inflated because they've had some devaluations over the last year, and they've had a merger with Starwood Hotels, so that made everything a little less valuable in their portfolio. So that redemption is worth 2.5 cents per point, which is a pretty good redemption on hotel property, which I'm happy about. Anyway, that's a new card that I had to get, and it's not one that I'm going to use anymore. I'm just going to hold on to it till the end of next year when it rolls over, because you get a free hotel night on the anniversary of the card. So
now, is there a fee associated to that, or is it just?
There is. Yeah, this one's $120.
So you get $120, and then you get all those points.
Yeah,
and you keep it for a year.
That's right. So on this redemption, for that $120, I'm getting about $1,000 worth of hotel stays in New York, plus there's a free hotel that comes on the anniversary, a free night up to a category 4. Still some pretty good properties around the world. The best redemption value on hotel points tends to be in Southeast Asia, where everything's super cheap. You get a 5-star hotel there that would cost, say, $1,200 a night in Paris, would cost you $260 in Vietnam, or on points, even a better deal.
Yeah.
Is great. That's somewhere that there's a lot of outsized value in the points and miles community.
Interesting.
Yeah. Right. So continuing through the card portfolio.
Yep.
That's one of the newer cards. I also just signed up for the Royal Bank British Airways Visa. Now this is one that I switched over my RBC Avion card to this. They let you switch without a new credit check, which is valuable. So I got that, and now I'm collecting British Airways points. Now, British Airways is not a great airline. Their points flights have huge surcharges attached. Say you want to fly from Toronto to London in business class. That would cost you, I think it's 100,000 points or so round trip, plus about $1,200 in surcharges, if not more. So that's a bad redemption. Where British Airways has a lot of value is on their partners like Cathay Pacific and American Airlines. There's a lot of value there. So it helps to keep some of those points in your balances, because they can be quite lucrative.
So Jim, I have a question. You have all these credit cards. Are you making multiple purchases on each credit card throughout the year? Or do you just opt into these programs so you collect the points and then just use it for that one-time use?
Usually the primary objective is to get the sign-up bonuses. Since the annual fee, if any, is already paid, I'll still use the card over the year if there's a promo on it. Like my main cards right now are the CIBC Aeroplan Visa and the American Express Platinum. So that's what I use for all my everyday spending. Unless I'm staying in a Marriott hotel, then I'll use the Marriott card, because that one pays a bonus every time you spend at a Marriott property. So each card I have has a use. They all get used, some a lot more than others, with the exception of those 2 cards I've had open forever since university that helped build my credit rating initially.
Right.
So the RBC Visa is really good to collect British Airways points to redeem on their partners. I have 2 Aeroplan visas from 2 different banks, because they each offered first-year free promos.
Okay, so, which ones are those ones?
This is the TD Aeroplan Visa Infinite.
Okay.
25,000 miles in first year free. So I picked that up in June. So did my wife, because it was just such a great deal. I think I recommended that one to you. You might have got that one also. So that one's good. Anytime I see something with first year free, it'll always pique my interest, especially if it's in a points program that I'm collecting in. And Aeroplan, I'm still collecting quite aggressively. And then 2 weeks ago, Mel and I were going through Vancouver Airport. And you know those kiosks they have set up where they hawk credit cards to passengers walking by?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
I always ignore those, except this time, because I heard from another guy in the points and miles community that they were offering a special promo on the CIBC Aeroplan Visa Infinite only at Calgary, Toronto, and Vancouver airports, and only at these retail kiosks where people try to get you to sign up for credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
20,000 miles, first year free, plus a $120 Air Canada gift card just for signing up. And that's an awesome deal. So
That is.
I both signed up for that one as well. That's only until October 30th. So anyone who's passing through Toronto Airport in the next 5 days might want to jump on that. That's a solid recommendation. Continuing through the cards I have right now, it's, well, the 2 Aeroplan cards, the 1 British Airways card.
Yeah.
Also have a Scotia Scene Movies Visa card because I got that one on a promo a while back, and I only use that when we go to the movie theater.
Okay. What's the bonuses on that one? I think I've seen my nephew have that one.
That one I've had for a few years. It has no annual fee and it has a very specific use once in a while. I think it came with 5,000 points, which at the time was good for 5 free movies. But for no annual fee, who cares? Credit scores bounce back. It didn't mean anything. All good.
Well, that's good.
So
Okay.
I've also got the American Express Marriott. We talked about that one, and the American Express Platinum, which I love. And that's a tough one to not churn.
Yeah, let's talk or dive into that one. So what was the sign up bonus for that one that you're pushing me to do?
That one comes with 60,000 American Express membership reward points. And those are a great currency because they're flexible and transferable. You can move them to British Airways or to Etihad or to Air Canada Aeroplan, or you can use them straight up for American Express's own travel program.
So you can actually move those points from the AMEX Platinum over to the Aeroplan?
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
And that's primarily what I use them for.
Okay.
Once in a while, I'll move them to British Airways for a flight to Hong Kong on their partner Cathay Pacific, but Aeroplan seems to be the best deal. So because you can earn them so much faster on the Platinum card, moving them to Aeroplan is quick, it's instant, and it's valuable. There are a lot of ways to earn Aeroplan miles in Canada, but American Express is a locked-in partner, and they'll still be in this partnership for years, I assume.
And what was the fee on that Platinum card, the American Express one? Do you remember?
That's $6.99 a year, but you get a $200 travel credit, so it's a net of $500.
So 500, yeah, okay.
$500, and if you get the sign-up bonus of $60K, and that alone is worth $1,200 by my measure, 2 cents a point.
Okay.
That's very good. That pays for it right away and then some. Plus all the benefits. You get gold status with Hilton and Marriott hotels. You get access to a lot of travel benefits, best travel insurance in the industry, and good restaurant perks too. We've used that a few times. It's a solid card to have all the time. And let me talk about churning for a sec. You may have heard of credit card churning. It shows up in the media once in a while, and that's what I've been talking about, where you keep a credit card for a year or 6 months, get the sign-up bonus, cancel it, sign up for it again after a designated wait period. That's called churning.
And what's the designated wait period traditionally?
I've heard guys go as little as 3 months. That's a bit too tight for my tastes. I'll wait at least 6.
Okay.
Usually they're successful with 3. Sometimes if you're churning on such a tight interval, the bank will just reopen your closed account, assuming that's what you wanted to do, and then no sign-up bonus.
Okay.
So it's something where your mileage will vary, of course. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Some banks are cracking down on 1 sign-up bonus per card, per lifetime, per customer only, which makes it a lot trickier when you're trying to really stack these bonuses. Now, what makes American Express valuable is their referral program. Once you're a card member, you can send a referral link to someone else. They can then sign up for the card, getting a higher sign-up bonus than they would through public channels, and you get a kickback on it. So that helps as well.
Well, that just gave me an idea. I should be hitting the link in the show notes with my referral, and then I can get some points. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. If you had a card, then you could definitely do that. And that's how a lot.
I only have a couple, so I guess that won't work for everything.
If a lot of the points and miles bloggers will do that. They'll help fund their site by having their referral links in their site, which is good. I try to help them out when I can.
Yeah.
Unless I have a card that I can self-refer, or my wife or a friend can refer to me, I'll take those first. But American Express might be cracking down on self-referrals as well, which makes sense. It's a loophole that I understand they might want to close, but it has been very—
The self-referral in how so?
What you could do is you could open an American Express Platinum card and refer yourself to an American Express Business Platinum card, hold both at the same time, collect sign-up bonuses for both. You have to use both, of course. They have fairly sizable minimum spend requirements because American Express is targeting higher net worth customers.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest minimum spend requirement I've seen is currently in the American Express Business Platinum. You have to spend $7,000 in 3 months, which is a lot higher. Most cards are $500 to $1,000 from other banks. So that's a big one.
So for me, and just obviously, Jim, as you know, my listeners are more so into real estate investing, and that's what I'm kind of preaching. I mean, the majority are first responders, but so if you're doing even like renovations at your house or on a rental property or anything like that, you should be taking advantage of these.
That's definitely the way to go.
And using your cards with your bonuses or mandatory payments, X amount of months, divide them out into multiple cards if you need to make that minimum.
That's exactly the strategy that would work for you and for a lot of your listeners in the same business. That's what you want to do. There are no cards offhand that I can think of that give a category bonus on renovation and building materials and whatnot. So you're best using something like the American Express Business Platinum or one of the Visa Infinite Privilege cards from the major banks, which give you 1.25 points per dollar spent. That would be the best way to go for big household expenses that aren't from a specific retailer.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would work for a lot of people. Definitely never use your debit card. That's something that I've always recommended.
Yeah, like literally everything that I purchase now is always on my credit card.
Good.
I mean, well, I have 2 Aeroplan, and they're both the TD Platinums. Or no, not the TD Platinums. Well, what's the one below the Infinite?
That's the Platinum.
Yeah, okay. I have the Platinum Travel. Yeah, so that's the one that I use now, and everything's all accumulated into the Aeroplan. So I mean, I have the stack of the Aeroplans and all my bills, everything through my house, even all my insurance. There are companies now that are again restricting the ability to even use credit card for automatic payments, but anywhere I can is definitely used by that. I never have cash on me anymore.
No, me neither. That's the way to go. And a debit card, definitely not. And when I see people making purchases in stores, the majority of people do use debit cards still. It's convenient. There might be a stigma against using a credit card or seeing a big credit card bill. I know I have one friend who collects miles, and he's very hesitant to put everything through on his credit card because his wife doesn't want to see a big credit card bill at the end of the month.
Right.
They're spending the same amount of money, but instead that debit card comes out, and I cringe inside every time I get a missed opportunity, as well as if there's a fraudulent transaction. If your card is cloned, that's your money that in the bank that's being played with and stolen. Whereas on a credit card, it's the bank's money, and it's covered by their loss and indemnity. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Never use a debit card overseas, of course.
Yeah, that's definitely a sense of security there for sure.
Yeah. So if I want to touch for a sec on what I think the most valuable points are in Canada. Canada is a pretty tight market. We've got a fairly small population, huge returns if you have access to a U.S. social security number or you're a U.S. citizen and can get credit cards from U.S. banks. That's another story. But I find that American Express membership rewards points, the ones you get with the Platinum and Gold cards, super valuable because they can be transferred and they accrue quite readily. Aeroplan miles are still pretty valuable for now. They're looking at a big change to the program come next June 2020. Once Aeroplan and Air Canada reintegrate and become one company, I would recommend everyone liquidate their Aeroplan accounts before then, because they're hinting at a new model where flights will cost a lot more. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, please.
Also, here's one we haven't talked about at all yet, and you wouldn't think that this is the most valuable airline point in the business. It's Alaska Air. Alaska Air is a small airline hubbed in Seattle, Anchorage, and LA, and their points are crazy because of what they can do with their partners. For example, the best airline redemption I ever had was on Emirates. So Emirates is based in Dubai. They fly this huge plane called the Airbus A380. It's the one that you may have seen that has showers on board for first class.
I have seen that, yeah.
Yes.
Not personally, but yeah, I have seen it. Yeah.
They're an Alaska Airlines partner, and they fly to a dozen or so cities in the US and I think Toronto. Anyway, using Alaska Airlines miles, a couple of years ago, a friend and I, another guy who's a police officer in Vancouver, and we travel a lot together because he's into points and miles also.
Cool.
We booked a pair of tickets on Emirates, going from Vancouver to San Francisco to Dubai to Thailand to Hong Kong to Bangkok and then to Hong Kong. Cost 100,000 miles, and it was in first class on Emirates. So that's the one where you get an individual room with a shower, best food you'll ever have in the world. And we had 3 flights on that thing, plus connecting flights on Alaska to get there.
And that was how many points?
100,000 Alaska miles. That's
Alaska miles, not points, right? Not like,
just what they call their currency.
Okay.
You can earn those using one of 2 Alaska credit cards that are available in Canada through MBNA Bank. Had we bought those flights at full retail, they would have been about $30,000 each. So quick calculation, those miles are worth 30 cents each, which is huge compared to the usual value of 1 to 2 cents a mile.
Yeah,
so
it's big time.
When I'm coaching people on this, I always recommend to look for that outsized value and try to book something like that. You have to be flexible on dates for sure. And you kind of have to be flexible on destinations also. If you just want to try out something like that, or you want to go to the Middle East, or you want to go to Southeast Asia, there are a few ways to get there, a few different airlines, a few routes. Make sure your timing's flexible and it'll all work out. If you want 4 tickets to Disneyland for Christmas, that's going to be tough to get.
Right.
If you want to go somewhere in Southeast Asia next summer and you just want to fly there in the most fun way possible, that's easy.
That's crazy. I mean, I know told stories over the time, and I know you and Mel have flown, done your little world traveling thing, and literally all on points.
Yeah, that's right. The only time we paid for it, we paid once for economy class to go to Australia for a wedding a few years ago, and never again. I won't fly over the Pacific, not in business class or better, because it's no.
That's
fun.
a long flight.
Yeah, and you get spoiled. Like you flew to, was it Shanghai in business class for the first time? And
yeah, I flew to China there in a pod, and I'm ruined now.
Yeah. It's all the difference. You don't feel like garbage when you arrive. The experience on board is fun, it's comfortable, and it's great. That was a points redemption for you, right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yeah. That was the light bulb that went off and said, not only do I have to work harder so I can sustain, certain things like this on my own, but 2, just the ability of leveraging points. I mean, if I didn't have conversations with you, I never would have had a pod. So
that's right. Yeah, you redeemed Aeroplan miles for it, which are easy enough to come by. They probably offered cash upgrades at check-in, and that I imagine would have been about $2,000 for a one-way.
It was expensive, yeah.
And that's definitely not worth it. But that price has been established because people will pay it. I won't.
No.
Because there are lots of miles to be had. But the availability is not always there. If you want to go, say you wanted to go to China on that trip for that specific day, Air Canada will only release about 8% of its seats to points inventory. There would be about 42 business class seats on that plane. Maybe 4 or 5 were available to points. And that started a year ago. So that's a pretty tight window to find exactly what you want, unless you jump on it as soon as the booking availability becomes open, generally up to a year before flight date.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was looking at. I was always looking through the Aeroplan app, and every once in a while it would pop up and it would be open and then it would be closed. And then I'm like, you know what? I got to jump on this. So I just jumped on it on one of the open days, and I was lucky. So.
Yeah, well, that's the alchemy of revenue management at Air Canada. They want to get the most dollars they can for that seat because it's a perishable commodity. Once that door closes and the plane pushes back, that is an expired product unless someone's in it.
Right.
So given that, you would think that seats would get cheaper closer to flight time because they're worried about them going out empty. That is not the case. As you know, a close-in booking costs way more than booking it way out for a cash ticket, at least not a points ticket. And they've got a pretty complex calculus as to how to maximize value on that. And somehow that works. It must be last-minute business travelers willing to pay it because vacationers sure aren't.
Just the one thing I just want to paint a picture too is, and maybe this isn't the right time, but is to tell people, so like in the real estate world, as you know, there's real estate meetup groups, and, I'm a real estate nerd. So I'm always jumping into like conferences and, entrepreneurial stuff. But the same goes for the points world. I mean, you guys literally have meetup groups, your conferences once a year, I believe, out in Vancouver, I think you said it was. But so just like, this is a whole little mini, not underground industry, but just like I don't know, whatever you call it, but it's like an organization really that's online that you guys all meet up and talk about strategies.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I thought I knew a lot about this. And then in 2016, I went to my first conference. There was one held in Vancouver here.
So what's that called? What's the conference called?
Points University.
Amazing.
So it's organized just by a bunch of guys. Generally, they all have websites and they can monetize their websites to some degree. And they charge a registration fee for the conference, enough to cover the fees. And you learn so much. Like I thought I knew a lot, but people are doing things and approaching programs and opportunities that I hadn't considered at all before. So it's definitely worth your time. So I went to that first one in 2016. And while the sessions were super valuable, there was a lot that came out in the after parties, things that people didn't want to talk about openly because there were representatives from the airlines and from the banks at the conference.
Gotcha.
They were invited attendees, of course. So we don't want to say too much, but what came out in the shadows, so to speak, was super valuable as well. So the first conference was in Vancouver in 2016, and then next year there was one in Calgary. The following year there was one in Toronto. I didn't make it to that, and there is not one this year because there's so much work to plan. No one's wanted to take it on. But we do have local meetups as well. Those are often found through Reddit. There's a Reddit group that's all about Canadian points and credit cards called Churning Canada, which is a pretty valuable resource, especially for beginners who want to know where to start.
All right, I'll put that in the show notes. Churning Canada?
Yeah, that's a good one. And another blog, a guy who, his name's Ricky, and it's called Prince of Travel. And it's all about Canadian travel hacking. But more so, it's about the aspirational trips he's been able to book. He's also a meeting organizer and a conference planner, and he puts on meetups and paid consulting sessions, and he's awesome. So that's Prince of Travel. That's definitely one to look at. And Points Hogger is another good one. And then a couple of the big American blogs, 1 Mile at a Time and View from the Wing, are really good if you're going into American credit cards, but more so just to see what some of these business and first class products look like that you might aspire to.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk to the type of person who would be listening and say they just have a debit card and maybe a TD cashback, 1% card. So they're just starting to dive into all this stuff and think about points and leveraging all that stuff. Where would you suggest that they start off?
That's a good lesson to learn. This isn't for everyone, but we're going to assume that someone wants to have a special trip, let's say a honeymoon trip, an anniversary trip, a year from now. They want to accumulate enough points to be able to take their special somewhere awesome overseas. You've got good credit, you've got a good income, you've got a spouse with the same. So you go into what's known as two-player mode, where both of you and your spouse get cards aggressively.
Two-player mode. I like this already.
Two-player mode, yeah. And there's an excellent chart on the Prince of Travel blog about how to do two-player mode in American Express really well. And it'll walk you right through that, where one of you opens an account, like a platinum card. You refer your partner to that. She gets it. She refers you to a different one. So not only are you getting the sign-up bonuses, you're getting referral bonuses, and these are stacked on one another. Within 6 months, you can have 150,000 miles in your account.
Wow.
But you need to spend aggressively. By doing that, your minimum spend is going to be at about 25 grand. So you're going to have a lot of returns, but let's hope you've got a lot of expenses that you can cover. You don't. So
$25,000 in expenses through the credit card?
That's right. Yeah. To hit those minimum spends the first time, which is a lot. But if you're renovating some rental properties.
Yeah, absolutely. That's easy. Yeah.
That's easy. Yeah. How much would you spend normally on renovating a condo?
Well, I mean, a condo is, something different, but I mean, for instance, what I'm doing, I'm going to be spending just over 200 on this one project. So, I mean, again, a lot of that is to contractors. So contractors aren't taking Visa. Actually, another topic maybe we could ask or talk to you too is, when is it beneficial? And I've asked you this before, when is it beneficial to use your Visa to collect those points when maybe you got to pay an extra 2% or 3% versus, just having to go your normal?
That is a very good point. And 2% seems to be the threshold. That's the
Okay.
collection fee on a lot of services, but I'll put an Aeroplan mile as worth about 2 cents.
Okay.
So it's, unless you do a big outsized redemption, like a round the world ticket for 150,000 miles, that will cost 20 grand in stores or retail. That would be worth it then. Depends what you want to do. If you can get more than 2% value out of your Aeroplan mile, then it's worth it to pay the fee. When we used to rent our home, we paid rent through a service called Rent Moolah, which charged 1.99%. And I was collecting Alaska miles while doing that to pay rent, which worked out really well because by my measure, Alaska miles are worth at least 5 cents each the way I redeem them. So that was a good return for me. If you're doing a straight up domestic economy class redemption, that's worth about 1%. You don't want to pay the fee to have a credit card processed then if that's the sort of redemption you're doing. So 2% fee is about the threshold for where I would be comfortable. If you need a lot of miles, then pay the 2%. Otherwise, stick to a cash method.
So you were, hold on, I want to go back to.
Sorry, there was a lot of numbers.
Yeah,
there.
I know, but what were you using to pay your rent?
I was using a Alaska Airlines MasterCard, which.
Okay, but you were using an affiliate or a program in order to
Rent
pay your
Moolah.
landlord. So what was that called?
Rent Moolah. So that was an initiative that the landlord set up. They said anyone who has pre-authorized payments, you can switch to this. We'd prefer if you did. I don't know if they were collecting a commission off that, but it worked out way better for us. No longer having to write checks and collecting miles on rent payments. So I've yet to find a mortgage lender that is willing to do that. So,
yeah, that would be nice.
There are actually side channels through which to do that. One's called, scratch that, edit that out. They no longer allow it.
Oh, okay. That's okay. We'll just keep going.
Yes. But if you could make your mortgage payments and all your renovation payments through credit cards, that would really pile up, especially on a $200K expense. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Again, there's a lot of, I mean, there's over 25,000 in materials for sure. So, I mean, that's easy. But I mean, your labor that you're going to be paying your contractors, a lot of them are not going to take Visa. They're going to be charging that at least 2, sometimes 3%.
Yeah. It's then on the borderline of whether or not that's worth doing.
Right.
But the majority want to be paid cash or check, right?
For sure.
Okay. Well, that's
cool.
That's a lot of expenses that are left on the table.
Yeah. Well, it is, but also I'm interested in this rent moolah because I mean, my strategy is maybe different than most, but there's I rent where I live and I invest where I invest, and I use that capital for that reason. But I'm actually going to look into that rent moolah.
Yeah, if you can turn the landlord onto it, and that will let you pay effortlessly using your credit card each time. They take American Express as well, but I think they charge an extra percentage point. So 3 points on an AMEX, which unless you need to hit a big minimum spend, I wouldn't recommend doing that. But yeah, it's something that worked out really well for us. And I was happy to pay that 2%. It got good value.
So 2%. So you're only suggesting obviously the credit cards, whatever you use it for, has that buffer there of the extra points. So like your British Airlines, you're getting about 5, right? You said?
That's right. Yeah. So if you're going to redeem for business class flights, it's worth paying a 2% fee because a business class redemption tends to be worth a lot more than 2%.
Okay.
Yeah. If that makes sense. So
I'm thinking through this AMEX Platinum, but that won't work for that one because you're not getting.
No, they're going to charge you 3%, but if you need it just to hit your minimum spend, then it is worth it.
I understand.
That's
okay.
the way to do it.
So you get your bonus. I got it. So you're.
That's right. Yeah. It's worth putting out a bit extra to secure that 60,000 up front.
I understand.
And that leads into something called manufactured spending, which I'm not going to get into too much because it's a risky and complicated matter. It's where you use your credit cards to buy cash equivalent items and then get the money back from them. It's like gift cards. The example you would use is going to the mint and buying dollar coins with your credit card and then depositing those dollar coins in your bank and getting those dollars to pay off that credit card.
I think I remember you telling me a story about someone who's
there's a lot of that going on, and these are the stories that come up in the private discussions at Points U and in other discussion groups. So It's risky and it's complicated. Now you have to have a lot of your capital tied up in these points generation programs. And if the bank doesn't like what you're doing, they can freeze your money for a while, and that happens. You get it back eventually, but until they figure out what's going on and what kind of loophole you have discovered, you could have tens of thousands of dollars tied up. And that's happened with some of my colleagues, and that's stressful for some.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well,
Wouldn't recommend that.
I'm envisioning the people who are listening to this is going to be taking a few key points to benefit maybe for an extra flight or two throughout the year. That's the goal of this one. I mean,
yes.
and if a few, hit the show notes and they start reading about some of the stuff and they're really interested in it, then I mean, that's when I think they'll dive in a little deeper and see how far the rabbit hole really goes with all these points that are available out there, that when it's leveraged properly.
Yeah, there is a lot there. So to circle back to what's best for someone just starting out, what I would recommend is an American Express card and a non-American Express card, because not everyone takes American Express. All big companies do. Some foreign locations don't. So it's always good to have a backup. So American Express, given that they're a transfer partner with Aeroplan and with British Airways, it's good to have one of those as a backup, because you don't want your points too diversified. You don't want to have some isolated WestJet dollars and Air Canada points and Alaska points. Those all need to be consolidated. So I would recommend a TD or a CIBC Aeroplan Visa Infinite and American Express Platinum. Between those two, you've got everything covered. The annual fee is a bit steep. It'll be net $620 unless you find a first year free offer on one of those Visa cards, and those tend to be everywhere. So you're looking at a $500 outlay. And from that, you'll have up to 90,000 miles straight up after your first 3 months.
Yeah.
That's a good value.
That is a great value. I mean, that's a flight right there
That is 3 economy class flights in North America plus change, plus 1 short haul. That's a good deal.
Yeah. No, I know. I think it was, what were we? I think Aaron and I were going, last year we had quite a few trips on Aeroplan alone. I think each one was 12 and a half or 25 each way.
Where'd you go?
Here to LA. We went to LA a couple times.
Yeah, that's $25K each round.
25, yeah. So that was it. So, I mean, that was huge. So without the year, we had 4 flights for free. So
that's perfect. And that's just with normal spending and new card signups.
Yeah, just putting everything on Visa, adding on the points. I never touch my debit card. And then any purchases through some homes, some renovations that I did that I was able to tie on to my business card, all points, all just tallies quickly. Yeah.
What are you using for your business card?
The same, the TD Platinum Travel.
Okay. There are good deals on business cards as well. And you don't even need to have a business. Like I have an American Express, my Marriott card is a business card, and it's for just a made up business that they don't care to audit or to look at. It's a sole proprietorship. So just name your business after yourself and apply for an American Express business card, and that's all good.
What is the AMEX business difference between the Platinum personal?
It tends to have a slightly higher fee, and the earning structure is different. But the way they sell it is that it has protections for your employees and other business perks that aren't really relevant to me. But instead, they say the American Express Business Platinum earns a flat 1.25 points per dollar, whereas the Platinum Personal earns 3, 2, or 1 point per dollar based on what you're buying, be it restaurants or travel or all of it.
Okay.
Well, there's a whole new dimension in terms of earning through opening business cards. Some banks will scrutinize it a lot more. For example, like CIBC will make you provide a business number or a tax registration number, so that doesn't work. But American Express is pretty easy going about it. Any business will qualify business.
Right.
Yeah. Well, again, that's something that someone just starting out might not want to get into. So,
there's a lot of real estate, people out there who have their private corps or their incs, and are funneling everything through there for tax purposes, right? So, it's a benefit for them. Yeah.
So that would absolutely work. So the way to start then would be to get an American Express and a Visa, go into 2-player mode. So both partners are earning with referrals to one another through American Express. That way you can get even more points. And as long as you have the discipline to not overspend and to manage a portfolio of, say, 6 credit cards between 2 people in your first year, you will do just fine.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think I might have to review that with Aaron.
I think you're good to go.
We'll get a spreadsheet on this 2-player mode, and we'll sort things out.
Yeah, 2-player mode is very lucrative. Yeah, it works well.
Nice. Actually, the Police and Fire World Games are in Amsterdam in a couple of years, so maybe that'll be our flight over with maybe some additional visits along the way. So maybe we should start tackling that trip.
When is that? 2 years?
Yeah, it's it just happened this year, so it'll be 21.
Yeah. I would turn that into a round the world trip. Go to Amsterdam the long way, go through Asia. It's just a few points more to add a stop in Asia and go that way.
All right, we'll talk off air.
Yeah, so I have a different appetite for what's a good value and what I like to do in travel than most people would.
Right.
There is a niche for everyone in this. For me, it's long, weird routings to countries I would never go to otherwise on the most ostentatious business and first class products available. That's fun. Some people want to go to Australia specifically for a wedding, or to New Zealand to see family and what have you. That's tougher to do, but absolutely doable.
Mm-hmm.
If you're flexible and there's no more than 2 people in your traveling party and you're easygoing on destinations, the world is wide open. There's a ton of ways to get there for next to nothing.
Well, there we go. We already got our 2-year plan set for me here, so we're good.
We are looking at some Aeroplan redemptions, Aeroplan devaluations coming over the next year or so. So
that's right.
We'll need to book that sooner rather than later.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll figure it out.
Get that later. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I think this is a great starting point. I mean, even just, if anything, the undertone is just switch everything over to your visa and your points if possible. Start generating those points and get the extra trip or 2 a year. If anything, if that's all you get out of this podcast or this episode, I think it's worthwhile listening.
I agree. That's exactly the way to go. Let your points work for you. Don't leave points on the table by using a debit card. Don't overextend, and be adventurous. Try some new stuff, but be smart.
Yes. Well, tactful. I mean, obviously there's blueprints here that you've just laid out here that people can go visit and try and follow, right? So, I mean, it's not like you're just winging it. It's the whole system you guys have. So.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And it works really well. It's worked for me. It's worked for everyone that I talk to. And I'm just like a mid-level apprentice in all of this. Some of the grandmasters have done things that are absolutely unthinkable.
I can imagine. I can only imagine. But some of the stories you told me, Jim, over some wine. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Sure. Well, if anyone wants to reach out to me and talk about this and want some coaching, you can find me at pointsandmilescanada@gmail.com. I'm happy to talk to anyone about this, or reach out through you. Anyway, have a look at the resources I mentioned, Prince of Travel and other websites, to get your feet wet and figure out what's going on and how this can help you.
No, that's great, Jim. I'll leave your information on the show notes as well. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, get some help on this, by all means, definitely reach out. Jim's a good guy. You just got me all excited about doing this again too. So
that's great.
We'll fire it up. All right. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot. Hopefully this helped. And Jim, thanks again, man.
You're welcome. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review on iTunes. Also, check out our website at 911wealthnetwork.com or contact Dave directly at 911wealthnetwork.com. Stay safe out there.